talk in your update a bit about Iran? How does the Iranian regime tie into all of this? What's happening in Canada?
Well, to start on the criminal level, in this Vancouver model, the Chinese triad underground banks that control this money laundering, well, let's just say they're at the top of the scale of international money laundering. It was found that, as I've indicated, South American cartels were using those laundering networks, and so were Iranian Hezbollah networks. So when Hezbollah is doing money laundering using some of those Chinese channels, then that can raise the concerns that, as we know, Hezbollah is involved in shipping weapons around the world, terror financing. So you wrap those terror financing networks into these not underground, above ground criminal currency exchanges in Vancouver and Toronto. That is one of the ways that Iran, as its state-sponsored crime networks work into the Canadian story. And it's the same story where you have people from the Iranian Guards who sort of drop the military suit and come into Canada wearing a business suit. The very same sort of oligarch networks are involved with Iran. And what takes it to a new level with Iran is we saw a case in New York in which a journalist, a dissident journalist, was targeted by Iranian networks. I'm hearing the same thing is happening in Canada. So Iran may even be, although much less powerful than China, as an authoritarian state, perhaps more aggressive with targeting diaspora communities in Canada. And what ties it all together is, again, the opposition Conservative Party is saying, we need to be tough not only on China, but on these similar all authoritarian states that are attacking our democracies and using criminals.
I can see how it's so difficult for Western governments, even when they want to crack down on, Iran or Russia, when those very countries are using the networks set up by ultimately the Chinese Communist Party and the company to launder their money, move people in and out, move goods in and out, move weapons in and out. Like, basically the Communist Party is the one that's through these facilities, facilitating all of these horrible regimes. And they're doing it in the West. Like, they're doing it in Canada. And at the same time, they're using those networks to block the government from doing anything about it.
I think that's right. You could say that the CCP is underwriting at the highest level those underground banking and sanctions evasion networks. I mean, look again at the Man Wanzhou case. It may not shock you that a pattern seen there was the alleged fraudulent use of a U.S. bank to route funds through Iran, and a subsidiary connected to allegedly Huawei had connections to Iran. There were indications that phone technology was involved. So that gets back to Chris' point that we see Iran and China potentially at the state company level working together in what look like money laundering or fraud transactions, which at the end of the day could help evasion of sanctions.
Yeah, it just amazes me. Whether you're talking about, the Mexican drug cartels or Hezbollah, somewhere the Chinese Communist Party is there. It's so deep.
So, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, Sam, was that it basically took Russia's invasion of Ukraine for people in the West to wake up and be like, oh, we have to sanction these Russian oligarchs. Like, we have to do something about this Russian influence. Would you suggest that what we could do in the West is provoke the CCP into invading Taiwan?
And this is some 4D chess.
Yes. Let's say we recognize Taiwan as an independent country. That will force the CCP's hand to invade Taiwan. Actually, they might not, but we'll have to do something more perhaps. They invade Taiwan and then we'll wake up. This seems like a good strategy, right?
Well, no, I wouldn't agree with you on that. I would say, and having talked to Taiwanese people, they want the action to come long before Taiwan is invaded. They're deeply they're deeply, makes sense. They're deeply concerned right now that China is ramping up. They believe China is learning lessons from Russia's attack on Ukraine, deep learning going on. And they believe that the West should take the steps that I'm speaking about, that is cracking down on these crime and oligarch networks from China before Taiwan is invaded. No one wants to see all the powers of the world fighting over Taiwan.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just didn't consult with any Taiwanese people before making my suggestion.
Well, no, it seems like, you know, given what happened in Ukraine, it seems like the only thing that will wake up the world, maybe, is if the Communist Party invades Taiwan. And even then, I'm not so sure, because Chinese influence is way bigger and more pervasive than Russia.
I do argue, would it take war in Taiwan for people to finally see that the CCP is no different from Russia, just a lot more powerful, really a lot more smart?
Let's hope not. Let's hope maybe what people can do is read Willful Blindness and perhaps wake up a little bit.
I think what we need is for like Netflix to option Willful Blindness and make it into
like a Narcos style.
I feel like we
show.
talked about this last time too. That, you know.
Well, this is a great selling point for Willful Blindness. If you want to prevent war, buy and read Willful Blindness.
I endorse that 1,000%. We're joking here, but I follow, you know, on Twitter some of these people that advise Congress, and they are literally saying it took a war in Ukraine for us to understand this strategic corruption and crack down. You know, let's be smart and start looking a few years ahead to what can happen next.